Define the Great Line was really a turning point in Underoath's career. It kind of marked the end of their trend into more accessible, kind of indie rock influenced hardcore and metalcore that they really embraced on They're Only Chasing Safety, and kind of saw them go back to their heavier beginnings. It felt like the band was truly finally settled and willing to explore themselves at this point, that they really kind of found out who they were as a band and what they wanted to really sound like. And Define the Great Line really had them exploring their individual talents and expanding upon those unique talents that they each contributed to the band. And what we got was one of the most raw and honest metalcore records of all time, and really one of the most influential metalcore records of all time. Something that could really be felt still to this day. You really still hear their influences all the time in modern bands and bands that have come up since that time, since 2006 really. And for a lot of people though, Define the Great Line kind of alienated them. It wasn't like They're Only Chasing Safety. It wasn't like even The Changing of Times. It really had a darker, more aggressive feel to it. It didn't have those real poppy moments that you come to expect from the previous two albums. It really was a change in the band and their sound and in themselves altogether. And at the same time as it alienated those fans who may have come on with those two albums, it did actually gain fans as well who were more attracted to the kind of grittiness that it had and the just aggressiveness that they really brought with Define the Great Line. And you really kind of wondered where they would go at this point. Were they continuing that sound? Were they expanding upon it? And, you know, the fans alike and people who had lost him didn't really know where they were headed at this point. You had people who really were wishing they'd go back to They're Only Chasing Safety, and you had people who were definitely hoping that they continue on with Define the Great Line. So Underoath followed that album up with Lost in the Sound of Separation. Underoath definitely decided to continue the sound that they explored on Define the Great Line, and that just utter heaviness that had. There's a real sense of seriousness with this album. While Define the Great Line was definitely a very kind of dark album for them, this is a less dark sense, but just more seriousness to it. It feels like there's some sort of impending doom that's coming throughout there. There's less of those poppy moments, even you saw on Define the Great Line, with the catchy vocal work and things like that. There were a few moments in Define the Great Line, at least, where there were kind of these sing-along moments, and there's less of them here. But where they are, they're, again, have a sense of urgency and a sense of seriousness to them. Where the moments, especially between Spencer and Aaron, where they're kind of going back and forth, they really kind of punctuate everything, and they feel very raw. And I really like that about this album. It's something that, while Define the Great Line kind of explored, Lost in Sounds of Separation really expands upon that tremendously, and there's more of those moments in particular where I wouldn't exactly call them upbeat or poppy or catchy or anything like that, but they feel more cohesive than they ever felt before, and they feel like they're really kind of bouncing off each other very well at this point. They're working so well together, and they definitely did in Define the Great Line, but here to a greater extent. They're definitely, one will pick up where the other one left off, and they complement each other very well on this album. They both kind of are used to great effect on here, and this is prevalent in a lot of songs, but especially the song A Fault Line, No Fault of Mine, is where you really hear that dynamic that the two vocalists have on this band. Now, there's still a lot of fast-paced riffs on here and just fast-paced, guitar drumming on here, but a lot of that post-rock and sludginess that defined the Great Line is carried over to here. There's a lot more of that as well. It's a much slower album in a lot of ways. It feels a lot more stagnant in a lot of ways. It feels like it's moving like a muddy river moving. That's kind of the best way to describe it. The song Emergency Broadcast, The End Is Near, is a perfect example of this. It's just layered in grit and grime, and it's probably the sludgiest song that they've ever written on here. And even those songs, even those moments of songs on this album are still kind of brightened up a little bit with nothing I would say is really catchy or poppy, but there are these just moments of kind of lightheartedness coming, especially with Aaron's vocal work, and even Spencer gets some clean vocal work on this album as well. And there's these moments that really weren't found on Define the Great Line that really are prevalent here. And like I said, they're used to definitely great effect. They provide this kind of sense of hope amongst the seriousness of this album and this kind of dire feel that you get from this album. And on top of that, I feel like there's a lot more experimentation in Lost in the Sound of Separation. It feels like they kind of branched out a little bit here. We saw them explore a little bit of that post-metal, post-rock sound. And here you get a little bit more of that, especially with the song Too Bright to See, Too Loud to Hear, where it starts off with this just ambient electronic work and slow guitars, and everything kind of builds up, and you get the clean vocal work comes in, and then you get this kind of chanting chorus, which is a moment that we kind of probably missed a little bit from the previous albums. That's something that probably would attract fans from. They're Only Chasing Safety. It's something that they had a lot of on that album that wasn't really on Define the Great Line, that we kind of get here a little bit on this song in particular, and then everything just kind of takes off from there. And it's really a great song to kind of cap everything off, and it really feels like they are branching out and experimenting on here, that they were willing to kind of push themselves musically throughout this album. Now, Lost in the Separation really kind of rides that momentum that Define the Great Line had and that it created, and it brings in everything from metalcore to post-metal to doom, sludge, mathcore. I mean, it's like I said, they experimented a lot with a lot of different sounds, and they brought kind of everything into this album. And it's all done well. There's no moments on here that really stick out at me as being, okay, well, they tried that and it didn't work. Everything here really, really worked. They sat down, they honed this sound just tremendously on here. And, you know, it really is truly something unique in the, you know, this was a point where metalcore was kind of exploding. I mean, Define the Great Line kind of really, really was the peak of that, and from there it just kind of, you saw so many bands coming out during that time, and this is, you know, 2008, so there's really a lot of bands that are coming up. This is kind of the peak of the metalcore genre. This is where you have so many great bands here to pick from and to listen to, so many great albums that were coming out at this point, and it was truly something special to see Underoath, a band that, again, really kind of hit the peak of metalcore in 2006 and really had one of the most influential albums, I would say, really of all time for that genre, to really capitalize on that sound and to really show what they could do and to push themselves beyond just metalcore and to branch out. And they really, really did that well, just to show every other band that nobody does it like Underoath. Thank you so much for watching the Underoath review series part 6, where we looked at Lost in the Sound of Separation. Next time, we're going to be taking a look at their final album, Disambiguation.